Listen carefully, because this is where most men fail before they even begin. You don't rise by adding more to your life. You rise by killing what no longer deserves to exist. Your habits, your excuses, your need for approval, all of it has to go. Reinvention is not a glow-up. It's a controlled demolition. And right now, you're still emotionally attached to the version of yourself that keeps you weak. You replay old identities like a broken script, telling yourself, "This is just who I am," as if that lie gives you permission to stay the same. But understand this: identity is not something you discover, it's something you construct. The powerful don't search for themselves. They design themselves with precision, with cold intent, with zero attachment to who they used to be. So ask yourself something most people are too afraid to confront. If your current self disappeared tonight, would anything valuable actually be lost? Or would it finally make space for something greater? Because you cannot evolve into a stronger man while protecting a weaker version of yourself. You cannot level up while clinging to comfort. The truth is brutal but necessary. You must be willing to erase who you are to become who you need to be. No announcement, no explanation, no emotional farewell. Just silence and transformation. From this moment forward, you either become the architect of your life or you remain its victim. There is no middle ground. And if you're still here, prove it, not to me, but to yourself. Go into the comments and write, "I erase what weakens me." Because the first step to becoming untouchable is having the courage to let your old self die. Number 1, cutting emotional weakness. Now understand this: once the old version of you is dead, the next enemy reveals itself, and it's more dangerous than anything external. It's your emotions. Not emotions themselves, but your lack of control over them. Most men are not destroyed by enemies. They are destroyed by their reactions. Anger that exposes them, attachment that weakens them, validation seeking that enslaves them. You think power comes from force, from loudness, from dominance, but real power is silent, controlled, calculated. The man who cannot control his emotions is a puppet, and the world is full of strings waiting to pull him. One insult, and he reacts. One rejection, and he collapses. One moment of discomfort, and he retreats. That is not strength, that is predictability, and predictability is weakness. Machiavellian truth: the more emotional you are, the more controllable you become. People read you, manipulate you, and use you without you even realizing it. Your anger becomes their weapon. Your desire becomes their leverage. Your fear becomes your cage. So what do the powerful do? They don't eliminate emotion, they weaponize it. They feel everything, but reveal nothing. They observe, they calculate, they wait. While others are reacting, they are positioning. While others are speaking, they are studying. While others are chasing approval, they are building quiet authority. You must become unreadable, cold, not in cruelty, but in discipline. Detached, not from life, but from the need to react to every trigger thrown your way. You don't need to prove anything to anyone, not your strength, not your intelligence, not your worth. The moment you feel the urge to prove yourself, you've already lost control. And control is everything, because the man who controls himself controls the game. So start now. Watch your reactions. Notice what triggers you. Notice how easily people can shift your state. That awareness alone will expose how vulnerable you've been. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. From this moment forward, you move differently. You pause before reacting. You think before speaking. You detach before chasing. You become the man who cannot be easily read, easily shaken, or easily influenced. And if you understand this, if you're ready to step into that level of control, go into the comments and write, "I control what controls others." Because the second step to becoming untouchable is mastering the one thing most men never will: your own mind. Number 2, strategic isolation and rebuilding power. Now comes the phase that most people fear, and almost no one survives with discipline, strategic isolation. This is where you separate yourself from noise, from distractions, from people who benefit from your weakness. Understand this clearly. You cannot reinvent yourself while staying in the same environment that created your current version. It's impossible. Your habits are reinforced by your surroundings. Your mindset is shaped by the people you tolerate, and your limits are quietly agreed upon by those who expect you to stay the same. So if you are serious about leveling up, then you must be willing to step away, not emotionally, not dramatically, but strategically. This is not loneliness. This is recalibration. Most men avoid isolation because it forces them to confront themselves. No distractions, no validation, no escape, just you and the truth you've been avoiding. And that's exactly why it's necessary. Because in silence, illusions die. You begin to see your patterns clearly, how you waste time, how you seek comfort, how you avoid discipline. You see how much of your life has been reactive instead of intentional, and for the first time, you gain the power to change it. Isolation sharpens perception. It removes the fog. It forces you to think independently instead of following the herd. And once you start thinking independently, you start moving differently. Machiavellian truth. Proximity is power, but only when chosen wisely. The wrong people don't just slow you down. They anchor you to a lower version of yourself. They normalize mediocrity. They reward weakness. They subtly punish growth because your evolution threatens their comfort. So you must become ruthless in what you allow into your circle. Not emotional, not aggressive, just precise. You don't need to cut people off with drama. You simply outgrow them with silence. You reduce access. You become less available. You stop explaining your moves. And slowly, your environment begins to shift. Because the moment you stop feeding into old dynamics, they lose their hold on you. During this phase, you rebuild yourself from the ground up. You establish discipline where there was chaos. You create structure where there was randomness. Your days become intentional. Your actions become calculated. You wake up with purpose, not impulse. You train your body, not for aesthetics, but for control. You train your mind, not for knowledge alone, but for clarity and strategy. You eliminate distractions that drain your focus, endless scrolling, meaningless conversations, empty entertainment. Every hour becomes an investment. Every decision becomes a move. This is where you stop living casually and start living deliberately. But understand this. This phase will test you. There will be moments where the silence feels heavy, where the absence of validation feels uncomfortable, where you question if it's worth it. That's the moment most people quit. They run back to noise, back to comfort, back to the familiar chains they've always known. But you don't. Because you understand something they don't. You understand that growth is supposed to feel uncomfortable. That isolation is not punishment, it's preparation. It's the forge where your new identity is built, stronger, sharper, untouchable. And as you continue, something changes. You no longer crave attention. You no longer seek approval. You become self-contained. Your confidence stops depending on external validation and starts coming from internal certainty. You know what you're building, you know where you're going. And that quiet certainty is more powerful than any loud declaration. People begin to notice, but they don't understand. They sense the shift, but they can't explain it. Because real transformation doesn't announce itself. It reveals itself through presence, through discipline, through results. You become harder to reach. Not because you're arrogant, but because your time is no longer cheap. You become harder to influence because your mind is no longer scattered. You become harder to break because you've already faced yourself in isolation and survived. This is where your power begins to solidify, not in what you show, but in what you've built in silence. And once that foundation is set, you don't need to prove anything. Your presence does it for you. So embrace this phase. Don't run from it. Don't dilute it. Lean into it with full awareness of what it's doing for you. You are not missing out. You are separating yourself from the average path. You are not alone, you are ahead. And if you're truly committed to this transformation, if you're willing to walk this path without needing constant validation, then go into the comments and write, "I grow in silence. I rise in power." Because the third step to becoming untouchable is mastering the art of building yourself where no one is watching. Number 3, rebuilding your identity with precision. There will come a moment, quiet, almost invisible, where you realize something unsettling. No one is coming to save you. No one is coming to guide you, fix you, or pull you out of the life you've been tolerating. And for a second, it hits hard. It feels heavy, because every part of you was conditioned to believe that somehow, someday, things would just fall into place. That motivation would arrive. That clarity would appear. That life would change without you having to become someone else. But that moment right there, that realization, is where weak men break and where powerful men are born. Because now, there are no illusions left, no comforting lies, just truth, raw, unfiltered truth. And the truth is this: if you don't build yourself with intention, life will build you by default. And default is always average, always predictable, always replaceable. So this is where you take control, not emotionally, not impulsively, but surgically. You don't just improve yourself, you reconstruct your identity with precision. You decide who you are going to be, not based on how you feel, but based on what is required to reach the level you demand. This is no longer about motivation. Motivation fades. This is about design, structure, standards, Machiavellian truth. The most dangerous man is not the strongest or the smartest. It's the one who has complete authorship over himself. The one who can step into any role necessary and execute without hesitation. That kind of man is not born, he is engineered. So you begin asking different questions, not what do I feel like doing today, but what does the man I'm becoming do today? You separate your current self from your constructed self. One is emotional, inconsistent, distracted. The other is focused, disciplined, deliberate. And every single day, you close that gap through action. Not thoughts, not intentions, action. You define your standards with zero compromise. How you wake up, how you train, how you speak, how you think, how you handle pressure. Everything becomes intentional, because identity is not built in grand gestures. It's built in repeated behaviors. The way you do small things becomes the blueprint for how you handle everything. So there is no off mode anymore. There is no "I'll start tomorrow." There is only alignment or misalignment. And misalignment is no longer acceptable. You start cutting out behaviors that don't match your new identity, not gradually, immediately. The laziness, the distractions, the weak routines, they don't belong anymore. And at first, it feels unnatural. It feels forced, because you're stepping out of comfort and into discipline. But that's the point. Comfort created the version of you that you're trying to leave behind. Why would you trust it now? At the same time, you begin installing new patterns. You train your body daily, not just to look better, but to build resilience. You train your mind, not just to learn, but to sharpen your thinking. You control your environment because focus requires protection. You start reading differently, thinking differently, moving differently. Everything becomes sharper, more intentional, more precise. And here's where most people misunderstand the process. They think identity change is about feeling confident. It's not. Confidence is a byproduct. The real shift happens when you no longer negotiate with yourself. When you say you're going to do something, and you do it. No excuses, no emotional debate, just execution. That's where self-respect is built. And self-respect is the foundation of real power. Because once you trust yourself, everything changes. Your decisions become stronger. Your presence becomes heavier. Your words carry more weight. You stop second-guessing yourself because you've proven, through consistent action, that you are who you say you are. And that kind of internal certainty is rare. But understand this process requires emotional detachment. You cannot rebuild yourself while being overly attached to comfort, to validation, to how things used to be. You must be willing to become someone unfamiliar, someone who operates at a level that your old self would find uncomfortable, maybe even intimidating. That's how you know you're doing it right. You also stop explaining yourself. This is critical. Weak men feel the need to justify their growth. They want others to understand, to approve, to support. But power moves in silence. You don't need to explain your discipline. You don't need to justify your boundaries. You don't need to seek permission to evolve. You just move, quietly, consistently, relentlessly. And as you do this, something powerful begins to happen. Your identity starts to solidify, not as an idea, but as a reality. You no longer feel like you're trying to be disciplined. You are disciplined. You're not working on focus. You are focused. The traits you once admired in others become your default state, and that's when the shift becomes permanent. People around you will feel it. They won't always understand it, but they'll feel it. The way you carry yourself changes. The way you speak becomes more controlled. The way you react becomes more calculated. You're no longer easily influenced, no longer easily distracted. There's a weight to your presence that wasn't there before, and that weight comes from internal alignment. Now here's the part most people won't tell you. This level of transformation comes with a cost. You will outgrow people. You will lose interest in things that once entertained you. You will feel disconnected from environments that no longer match your standards. And that's not a loss. It's a signal that you're evolving. The mistake would be trying to hold on to those things out of comfort or nostalgia. Don't. Because every time you go back, you weaken the identity you're building. You create internal conflict. And conflict destroys momentum, so you move forward, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it feels isolating, because you understand the long-term gain. You also become more selective with what you consume. Information, conversations, energy. You stop feeding your mind garbage. You stop engaging in pointless debates. You protect your focus like it's your most valuable asset. Because it is. The more focused you are, the faster you evolve. The more scattered you are, the longer you stay average. And slowly, without needing validation, you start to see results, not just externally, but internally. Your discipline strengthens, your thinking sharpens, your emotional control deepens. You become harder to shake, harder to influence, harder to break. That's when you realize you're no longer the same person. You've rebuilt yourself. Deliberately, intentionally, completely, and from here, there's no going back. So if you're at this stage, if you're ready to stop living by default and start living by design, then prove it. Not to anyone else, but to yourself. Go into the comments and write, "I become what I decide." Because the fourth step to becoming untouchable is taking full control of who you are and refusing to be anything less. Number 4. Discipline, the religion of the untouchable. Let me tell you something most men will never accept, and that's exactly why they stay average their entire lives. You don't have a motivation problem, you have a discipline problem. And until you face that truth without flinching, nothing in your life will change in a way that lasts. Motivation is weak, it's emotional. It comes and goes like a mood, like a passing impulse that disappears the moment things get difficult. Discipline, on the other hand, is cold. It doesn't care how you feel. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't wait for the perfect moment. It executes every time, without exception. And that right there is the difference between men who talk about leveling up and men who actually do it. You've been conditioned to believe that you need to feel ready before you act, that you need energy, inspiration, or the right mindset before you begin. That's a lie. A comfortable lie that keeps you exactly where you are, because the truth is far less appealing and far more powerful. You act first, you move first, you execute first, and the mindset follows, not the other way around. The man who waits to feel like doing something will always lose to the man who does it regardless of how he feels, every single time. Machiavellian truth. The man who cannot command himself will forever be commanded by circumstances. If you can't wake up when you say you will, if you can't follow through on basic commitments to yourself, if your actions are dictated by comfort instead of intention, then you are not in control of your life. You are reacting to it. And reactive men don't build power. They chase it and wonder why it keeps slipping through their fingers. So this is where the shift becomes non-negotiable. Discipline is no longer something you try to develop. It becomes your standard, your baseline, your identity. You don't ask yourself whether you feel like doing the work. That question no longer exists. The only question is, does this align with the man I'm becoming? If the answer is yes, then it gets done. Immediately. Without internal debate. Without hesitation. You build systems, not reliance on willpower. Because willpower fades. Systems don't. You wake up at the same time every day, not because you're motivated, but because that's who you are now. You train your body consistently, not because you feel inspired, but because it's part of your structure. You focus on your work without distraction, not because it's easy, but because you've removed the option to do otherwise. You eliminate choice where discipline is required. And that's how consistency is built. Not through emotion, but through design. At first, it feels restrictive, like you're limiting your freedom. But that's only because you've been living without structure for so long that chaos feels normal. The reality is the opposite. Discipline is freedom. Because when your actions are consistent, your results become predictable. And when your results are predictable, you gain control. Control over your progress, control over your time, control over your life. That's real freedom. Not doing whatever you feel like, but becoming the kind of man who gets what he wants because he's built the habits required to earn it. And here's where it gets uncomfortable, because this is where excuses die. You can no longer blame your environment, your past, your circumstances, or other people, because discipline removes all of that. It forces accountability. It puts the responsibility exactly where it belongs, on you. Every missed opportunity, every wasted hour, every broken promise to yourself becomes visible. And most people can't handle that level of accountability, so they avoid discipline altogether. They stay in comfort where excuses are allowed to exist. But you don't, because you understand something they don't. You understand that every time you break a promise to yourself, you weaken your identity. You lower your standards. You send a message to your own mind that your words don't mean anything. And over time, that destroys self-respect. And without self-respect, there is no power, there is no confidence, there is no authority, there is only doubt. So you start keeping promises to yourself. Small ones at first. Wake up on time. Do the work you said you would do. Follow through on commitments, even when it's inconvenient, especially when it's inconvenient, because that's where discipline is tested. Not when it's easy, but when it's uncomfortable, when you're tired, when you don't feel like it, when no one is watching. That's where your identity is being built, in those quiet moments where you either rise or you fall back into who you used to be. And as you continue, something shifts. You stop negotiating with yourself. The internal resistance fades because there's no longer an option to give in. You've removed the escape routes. You've made discipline your default. And once that happens, everything accelerates. Your progress compounds. Your confidence grows. Your mindset sharpens. Because you're no longer wasting energy fighting yourself. You're aligned. This is also where your tolerance for weakness disappears. Not just in others, but in yourself. You start to notice how often people make excuses, how quickly they give up, how easily they're distracted. And instead of being influenced by it, you become repelled by it because you've seen what discipline can do. You've experienced the shift, and you're no longer willing to go back. You also begin to understand why so few people reach high levels of success. It's not because they lack intelligence. It's not because they lack opportunity. It's because they lack consistency. They start strong, but they don't sustain it. They rely on bursts of motivation instead of building unshakable discipline. And eventually, they fall back into old patterns. That's the cycle you've now broken. You don't rely on how you feel anymore. You rely on what you've built, your routines, your systems, your standards. That's what carries you forward, even on days when your energy is low. And those are the days that matter the most, because anyone can perform when they feel good, but only disciplined men perform when they don't. And that's what makes you different now. You're not chasing improvement. You're embodying it. You're not hoping for results. You're creating them. You're not waiting for change. You are the change. And from this level of discipline, power becomes inevitable. Because consistency over time beats everything. Talent, luck, circumstance, everything. And once you've built that consistency into your identity, there's nothing that can stop you except yourself. And you've already proven you're no longer your own obstacle. So if you've reached this point, if you're done relying on motivation and ready to operate at a level most people will never touch, then prove it. Not with words, but with action. And right now, take one action. Go into the comments and write, "I execute without emotion." Because the fifth step to becoming untouchable is turning discipline into your religion and living by it without compromise. Number 5. Silent power and control of perception. One day, without warning, you'll notice something strange. People start treating you differently, not because you announced your transformation, not because you explained your growth, but because something about you has shifted and they can feel it even if they can't define it. Your presence becomes heavier, your words become fewer but more precise, your reactions slow down, and in that space, power begins to emerge. This is the phase where most men make a critical mistake. They start talking too much, they reveal too much, they try to prove what they've become, and in doing so, they give away the very power they've built. Because real power is not loud, it is controlled, it is measured, it is silent. Understand this deeply. Perception is reality in the eyes of others, not truth, perception. And the man who controls perception controls influence. Machiavellian truth. It is not enough to be powerful. You must appear powerful in a way that others cannot easily decode or challenge. The moment people fully understand you, they begin to predict you. And the moment you become predictable, you become controllable. That's why you must learn the art of restraint. You don't share every plan. You don't express every thought. You don't react to every situation. You create space between stimulus and response. And in that space, you build mystery. Most men expose themselves without realizing it. They speak impulsively. They over-explain. They try to be liked. And every time they do that, they reveal their insecurities, their intentions, their weaknesses. But you don't operate like that anymore. You observe more than you speak. You listen more than you react. You analyze before you respond. And when you do speak, it carries weight because it's rare, deliberate, and controlled. Silence becomes your advantage. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you understand the value of timing. You also begin to master emotional concealment, not suppression, but control. You don't allow your face, your tone, or your body language to betray what you're thinking or feeling. You become composed under pressure, calm in chaos, unreadable in conflict. And this makes people uncomfortable because they can't figure you out. They don't know how to influence you, how to provoke you, how to predict your next move. And that uncertainty gives you leverage. Leverage is everything. In conversations, in relationships, in business, in life. The person with more information and less exposure always has the advantage. So you become selective with what you reveal. You don't lie unnecessarily, but you don't volunteer information that weakens your position. You answer strategically. You redirect when needed. You maintain control of the narrative without appearing controlling. This is subtle power, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself because it's felt. And here's where your mindset must evolve even further. You stop seeking validation through expression. You no longer feel the need to prove your intelligence, your strength, or your worth through words. Because you understand that the more you try to prove something, the less convincing it becomes. Real confidence doesn't speak loudly, it exists quietly. It shows through consistency, through discipline, through presence. And when people sense that, they respect it, even if they don't fully understand it. At the same time, you learn to read others. This is critical, because controlling perception is not just about how you present yourself, it's about how you interpret others. You watch their behavior, their patterns, their inconsistencies. You listen to what they say and what they don't say. You pick up on subtle cues, tone shifts, body language, hesitation, and over time, you begin to see people clearly, their motivations, their insecurities, their intentions, and once you see that, you cannot be easily manipulated. This is where you become dangerous, not in a reckless way, but in a controlled, strategic way, because now you're not just reacting to the world, you're understanding it. You see the game being played beneath the surface, and while others are caught in emotion, you're operating with clarity. You don't get pulled into unnecessary conflicts. You don't waste energy on meaningless arguments. You choose your battles carefully, and when you engage, you do it with precision. You also become more selective with your attention, because attention is currency. Where you focus determines what grows. So you stop giving attention to things that don't serve your goals. Drama, negativity, distractions. You withdraw your energy from situations that don't align with your direction. And in doing so, you regain control of your focus. And focus is one of the most powerful tools you have. Now, here's the part most people won't tell you. This level of control can feel isolating, because you start to see through things that once entertained you. Conversations feel shallow, interactions feel predictable. You notice how often people speak without thinking, react without awareness, act without intention, and it creates a gap between you and them. But that gap is not a weakness, it's a result of growth. You're no longer operating on the same level. The mistake would be trying to shrink yourself to fit back into that space. Don't. Because every time you do that, you dilute your power, you compromise your standards, you weaken your identity. Instead, you accept the distance, you embrace it, because you understand that not everyone is meant to walk this path. Not everyone is willing to operate at this level of awareness and control. And that's fine. Your journey is not about fitting in, it's about rising above. As you continue, your presence becomes more refined, more controlled, more intentional. You don't rush, you don't react impulsively, you move with purpose. And that alone sets you apart. Because in a world full of noise, speed, and distraction, the man who is calm, deliberate, and focused stands out without trying. People notice, they watch, they become curious. And that curiosity gives you influence. But you don't chase that influence. You don't use it recklessly. You understand that power, once gained, must be managed carefully, because the same awareness that gives you an advantage can also create arrogance if you're not disciplined, and arrogance leads to exposure. It makes you predictable, it makes you careless, so you stay grounded, not in humility that weakens you, but in awareness that sharpens you. You remember where you started. You remember the version of yourself that lacked control, that reacted emotionally, that sought validation, and you use that memory not to dwell, but to stay disciplined, to stay focused, to stay sharp. Because the moment you become complacent, you start slipping back. So you maintain your standards. Quietly, consistently, relentlessly. You don't need applause. You don't need recognition. You don't need to prove anything to anyone, because you know exactly who you are and what you're building. And that internal certainty is unshakable. Number 6, detachment from outcomes, obsession with execution. At some point, if you've truly been paying attention, you'll notice a silent war happening inside you, a constant pull between what you want and what you fear losing. The outcome, the result, the validation, the recognition, and this is where even disciplined men collapse, not because they lack effort, but because they are emotionally chained to outcomes they cannot fully control. They work, but they're anxious. They act, but they're desperate. They move forward, but they're constantly looking over their shoulder, wondering if it's working. And that tension, that quiet desperation, it leaks into everything. Your decisions become rushed. Your energy becomes unstable. Your focus fractures. And without realizing it, you sabotage your own rise. So understand this with absolute clarity. Attachment to outcomes is a hidden weakness. It feels like ambition, but it's not. It's dependence, and dependence destroys power. Machiavellian truth: the man who needs a specific outcome to feel in control is already out of control, because outcomes are influenced by variables beyond you: timing, people, circumstances, chance. But execution, that belongs entirely to you. And the moment you shift your focus from outcomes to execution, everything changes. Your mind clears, your actions sharpen, your consistency becomes unshakable, because now you're no longer chasing results, you're building them. You see, weak men are outcome obsessed. They start something and immediately ask, what will I get from this? How long will it take? What if it fails? And those questions poison their discipline, because every action becomes conditional. Every effort becomes tied to immediate reward. And when the reward doesn't come fast enough, they quit, they pivot, they retreat, over and over again, repeating the same cycle of almost becoming something, but never fully arriving. But you don't operate like that anymore. You become obsessed with execution, not perfection. Execution, showing up, doing the work, following through, day after day, regardless of what you see externally. You measure your progress by your consistency, not by immediate results. Because you understand something most people don't: results lag behind effort. Always. There is a delay, a gap between what you do and what you receive, and only those who can operate in that gap without losing focus ever achieve anything meaningful. This is where emotional detachment becomes your greatest weapon. You do the work, and you let go. You execute, and you move on. You don't sit there refreshing outcomes, checking reactions, seeking confirmation that it's working, because that behavior pulls you back into dependence, back into weakness. Instead, you trust the process you've built, you trust your discipline, and you keep moving. There's a certain coldness required here, a willingness to act without immediate emotional reward, a willingness to invest time, energy, and effort into something that may not pay off today, or tomorrow, or even next month. And that's where most people fail. They can't handle delayed gratification. They need feedback. They need validation. They need reassurance. And because of that, they never reach the level where results become inevitable. But you do, because you've trained yourself to operate without needing constant confirmation. You don't need to see progress every day. You trust that it's happening. You don't need applause. You know what you're building. You don't need recognition. You recognize yourself, and that internal certainty frees you. Now, here's the paradox, and it's powerful. The moment you detach from outcomes, you actually increase your chances of achieving them, because you remove the emotional pressure that distorts your decisions. You stop forcing things. You stop chasing. You start executing with clarity. And clarity leads to better actions. Better actions lead to better results. It's not magic, it's alignment. You also become more resilient, because when you're not attached to a specific outcome, failure loses its power over you. It's no longer personal. It's data, feedback, information you can use to adjust your approach. You don't collapse, you don't spiral, you analyze, adapt, and continue. That's real strength, not avoiding failure, but neutralizing its emotional impact. And as you keep executing, something shifts inside you. Your identity strengthens even further. You begin to see yourself as someone who follows through no matter what. Someone who doesn't get shaken by uncertainty. Someone who operates with consistency, regardless of external noise. And that identity compounds, because now your confidence is no longer based on outcomes. It's based on your ability to execute. And that's something no one can take from you. Not failure, not rejection, not setbacks. Because you've built it internally, through action, through repetition, through discipline. You also stop comparing yourself to others. This is critical, because comparison is rooted in outcomes. Who has more success, more recognition, more visible progress? And that pulls you back into the very mindset you've escaped. Instead, you focus on your own execution, your own path, your own standards, because you understand that everyone's timeline is different, everyone's variables are different, and comparison only distracts you from what actually matters. You measure your days differently now, not by what you gained, but by what you executed. Did you show up? Did you follow through? Did you maintain your standards? That's the metric, that's the game, and if you win that game consistently, results become inevitable. There's also a deeper level to this: control. When you detach from outcomes, you regain control of your mental state. You're no longer riding the highs and lows of external results. You're stable, focused, grounded, and that stability allows you to operate at a higher level because you're not wasting energy on emotional swings. You're directing it into execution, and that's where you become dangerous, because now nothing shakes you. Not slow progress, not setbacks, not uncertainty. You keep moving, relentlessly, quietly, consistently. While others are reacting to outcomes, you're building momentum. And momentum is what separates those who rise from those who stall. Over time, that momentum becomes visible. Results start to appear, slowly at first, then faster. Opportunities open up. Doors that were once closed begin to shift. And people will look at you and think it happened suddenly. They'll say you got lucky, that things just worked out, but you know the truth. It wasn't sudden. It was built, day by day, action by action, decision by decision. While they were watching outcomes, you were mastering execution. And now, you're operating on a level they can't comprehend. So embrace this phase. Don't rush it. Don't try to shortcut it, because this is where real power is forged, in the ability to act without attachment, to move without needing immediate reward, to trust your process when nothing around you is confirming it yet. That's what separates you. That's what makes you untouchable. Number 7. Selective aggression and controlled dominance. Before you become truly untouchable, there is one final weakness that must be removed, and it hides in plain sight. It's not laziness, it's not fear, it's hesitation, that quiet moment where you know what needs to be done, but you delay, you overthink, you wait for the right time. And in that hesitation, opportunity dies, power slips, momentum breaks. Most men don't lose because they lack ability. They lose because they fail to act decisively when it matters. They either become too passive or recklessly aggressive. Both are forms of weakness. One avoids action, the other wastes it, and neither leads to control. So understand this clearly. Power is not constant aggression. It is controlled aggression. It is knowing exactly when to strike and doing it without hesitation. Machiavellian truth: the man who cannot be dangerous cannot be respected, but the man who is always dangerous cannot be trusted. You must exist in the balance, calm, composed, restrained, but capable of decisive, overwhelming action when required. That is controlled dominance. Most people misunderstand aggression. They think it's loud, emotional, reactive. It's not. That's immaturity. Real aggression is quiet, focused, directed. It's the ability to commit fully to an action without doubt once the decision has been made. It's not about intensity, it's about precision. You don't lash out, you don't react impulsively, you choose your moments, and when those moments arrive, you don't hesitate. This is where your previous work comes together. Your discipline gives you consistency, your emotional control gives you clarity, your detachment from outcomes gives you stability, and now you add execution under pressure. Because in the real world, opportunities don't wait for you to feel ready. They appear suddenly, briefly, and then they're gone. And if you hesitate, someone else takes them. That's the reality. So you train yourself to act decisively. You reduce overthinking. You trust your preparation. You make decisions based on logic, not fear. And once the decision is made, you commit. Fully. No second guessing, no looking back. Because hesitation after commitment is just another form of weakness. You either act or you don't. There is no half action. You also learn to identify where aggression is necessary. Not every situation requires force. In fact, most don't. But some do. And the mistake most men make is applying the wrong energy at the wrong time. They're passive when they should be assertive. They're aggressive when they should be patient. And because of that, they lose control of the situation. You don't. You read the situation, you assess the environment, you understand the dynamics at play, and then you respond with the exact level of intensity required. No more, no less. That's control. That's dominance. Not overwhelming force, but precise application. There will be moments where you need to step forward and take what's yours, opportunities, positions, decisions, and in those moments, you don't wait for permission. You don't seek validation. You act because you understand that in competitive environments, hesitation is interpreted as weakness, and weakness invites pressure. At the same time, you don't waste energy on meaningless battles. This is critical, because not every conflict is worth engaging in. Not every challenge deserves your attention. Weak men fight everything. They react to every insult, every disagreement, every minor issue, and in doing so, they drain themselves, they lose focus, they scatter their energy. But you are selective. You choose your battles based on value, not emotion. If it doesn't move you forward, you ignore it. If it doesn't align with your goals, you dismiss it. You don't get pulled into distractions disguised as conflicts. You maintain your direction. And when you do engage, it's intentional. This selectiveness is what gives your aggression weight, because it's rare, it's controlled, it's not something people see often, and that makes it effective. When you step in, it means something. When you act, it carries impact, because it's not your default, it's your weapon. You also become comfortable with pressure. This is where most people break. High-stakes situations, uncertainty, risk. They hesitate because they fear the consequences. They overanalyze because they don't trust themselves, and in that hesitation, they lose the moment. But you've built something different. Through discipline, through isolation, through execution, you've developed internal certainty, not arrogance, but trust. Trust in your ability to handle whatever comes next. So when pressure rises, you don't retreat, you lean in. Because you know that growth, opportunity, and power all exist on the other side of discomfort. You also understand that not every decision will be perfect, and that's fine, because imperfect action beats perfect hesitation every time. You adjust as you go, you learn through movement, not overthinking. And that's what keeps you ahead. While others are still analyzing, you're already executing. There's also a deeper layer to this: ownership. When you act decisively, you take full responsibility for the outcome. No excuses, no blame, no deflection. Whether it works or not, it's yours. And that level of ownership strengthens you, because it forces growth, it forces awareness, it forces improvement. Weak men avoid responsibility because it exposes their flaws. Strong men embrace it because it sharpens them. And now, you're operating at that level. You don't wait, you don't hesitate, you don't shrink, you assess, you decide, you act. And over time, this becomes your identity. You become known, if not by others, then by yourself, as someone who executes when it matters, someone who doesn't fold under pressure, someone who takes control of situations instead of reacting to them. That's dominance. Not loud, not chaotic, controlled, precise, effective. And here's what happens next. People start to recognize it. They may not say it directly, but they feel it. They see how you move, how you respond, how you act under pressure, and they adjust accordingly. Because presence like that commands respect, not through force, but through consistency. Not through intimidation, but through capability. And once that reputation is built, it reinforces itself. Because now, you're not just acting decisively, you're expected to, and expectations shape behavior, both yours and theirs. But you don't rely on that. You stay grounded, you stay focused, because you know that power, once gained, must be maintained, and maintenance requires the same discipline that built it. So you continue refining, you continue observing, you continue acting with precision. No wasted movement, no unnecessary conflict, No hesitation when it matters. Just control. Number 8. Legacy, power, and the final ascension. At the end of all this, when the noise fades, when discipline becomes automatic, and when your habits no longer require force, you arrive at a question most men never dare to ask. What will remain when I'm gone? Not what you want, not how you win, but what endures. This is where everything changes. This is where success is no longer enough. This is where you stop chasing results and start constructing legacy. Because everything you've built so far, your discipline, your control, your precision, was never just about improving your life. That's too small. Real power is measured by what you create that outlives you. Most men stay trapped chasing temporary rewards, money, status, attention, things that fade or get taken. But legacy is different. It is built with intention, sustained over time, and anchored in purpose. Machiavellian truth. The highest form of power is not control over people. It is influence over time. The ability to shape outcomes even in your absence. To build systems, ideas, and structures that continue moving without you. That is dominance at its peak. But this level demands sacrifice. Not surface-level sacrifice, the kind people talk about to feel productive. Real sacrifice. You will give up comfort. You will give up distractions. You will give up the life most people settle for. Because legacy requires obsession, clarity, and relentless focus. You are no longer just improving. You are constructing something with weight, something that reflects your standards. Whether it's a business, a body of work, or a network, it must be intentional. Designed, precise, a reflection of who you've become. Most men fail here because they get comfortable. They reach a certain level, see results, and relax. They start enjoying rewards before securing the structure, and slowly, everything declines. But you don't make that mistake, because you understand that power is not achieved. It is maintained, daily. Without exception, there is no finish line. The moment you stop, you lose ground. So you keep evolving. You refine your systems. You sharpen your thinking. You elevate your standards. You don't settle, because settling is decay. At this level, your thinking expands. You stop focusing on short-term wins and start thinking in years, even decades. You ask different questions. What will matter long-term? What compounds? Where your energy creates the greatest return? This shift changes everything. You become more patient, but more intense, more calculated, but more decisive. You stop reacting to the moment and start shaping the future, quietly, consistently, without needing recognition. And that's when you realize you no longer need to be seen. Your work speaks. Your presence speaks. You don't chase attention. Attention comes to you. And even then, you don't depend on it, because you know how unstable it is. You stay grounded in execution, in standards, in control. At this level, loneliness evolves, not the confusion you once felt, but a quieter separation. You think differently, you operate differently. Very few people can relate, but instead of resisting it, you accept it. Because this is the cost of elevation. Not everyone is meant to walk this path. Your journey is not about fitting in, it's about rising above. You become selective with everything, your time, your energy, your focus. You eliminate distractions, you reject mediocrity. Your standards become your filter, and that filter protects your progress. You also become aware of your influence, not in arrogance, but in control. The way you move affects others, and with that comes responsibility, not to impress, but to stay aligned. Because the moment you lose alignment, everything collapses. So you remain sharp, disciplined, focused, and over time your life becomes a direct reflection of your mindset, intentional, controlled, designed. That's when it hits you. You've become untouchable. Not because no one can reach you, but because nothing can control you. Not emotions, not circumstances, not people. You operate on your own terms. That is real power. But even here, this is not the end. Because the final level isn't about what you build for yourself. It's about what you build beyond yourself. And that requires depth. a deeper level of thinking, strategy, and psychological awareness that goes beyond surface-level content, beyond motivation, beyond discipline. It requires entering a different space, a deeper one, and that's exactly why I created something for those ready to go further. Because not everyone will understand this path. Not everyone is built for this level. But if you've felt every word of this, then there's a place where you can go deeper. That's where my Patreon comes in. This isn't surface-level motivation. This is deeper content, sharper, more strategic, more raw, more real. The kind of knowledge that doesn't just inspire, it transforms how you think, how you move, how you operate. So if you're serious about becoming untouchable, if you're ready to step into a level most men will never reach, then join me there. Because that's where real evolution begins. And before you leave, prove it to yourself. Go into the comments and write, "I build what outlives me." If this shifted your mindset, don't just scroll away. Like the video, subscribe to Psygrythm, turn on notifications, because this isn't entertainment, it's a blueprint, and you're either going to use it or watch others rise with it. The choice is yours. There is one last truth you need to face, and it's the one most people spend their entire lives avoiding. No matter how much you learn, no matter how much you build, no matter how far you go, at the end of it all, it comes down to one thing: you. Not your environment, not your past, not your excuses, just you. Because every system you create, every habit you build, every level you reach, can collapse the moment you lose control of yourself. That's the final test. Not becoming powerful, but staying powerful when no one is watching, when nothing is forcing you, when it's just you and your choices. Most men never reach this level because they always leave a door open, a way back to comfort, a way back to weakness. They tell themselves they've changed, but deep down, they still keep the option to quit. And that option is what eventually destroys them. Because when pressure hits, when life becomes unpredictable, they fall back into what's familiar. And what's familiar is usually the version of themselves they were supposed to leave behind. But you don't leave that door open anymore. You close it permanently. You make it clear to yourself that there is no return, no fallback, no second identity waiting to take over when things get hard. This is where your transformation becomes irreversible. Because now it's not about effort, it's about identity. You don't try to be disciplined. You don't work on control. You don't aim for power. You are those things fully, completely, without negotiation. And once that identity is locked in, your actions follow naturally. There is no internal conflict, no debate, no hesitation, just alignment. And here's what makes this level different. You no longer need motivation, validation, or even results to keep going. Because your standard is internal, your drive is internal, your purpose is internal. You move because that's who you are, not because of what you'll get. And that's what makes you dangerous. Because now, nothing external can control you. Nothing can distract you. Nothing can weaken your direction. So from this moment forward, understand this clearly. You are either everything you've been building, or you are nothing. There is no in-between, no partial version, no almost there. You either embody it, or you don't, and the world will respond accordingly. So if you've made it this far, if you've followed every step, if you felt this shift inside you, prove it one last time. Go into the comments and write, "I am the standard," not for anyone else, but for yourself. Because at the end of all this, the final step to becoming untouchable is realizing that everything begins and ends with you.